Nevena, I'll leave you the floor. Please introduce yourself better than I have been able to, and I'll be on my way in the background, okay?
Thank you so much, Saba, and thanks everyone for joining. It's an honor being here with all of you today and talking about one of the topics that I'm very passionate about. So I will go ahead and share my screen now. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to talk about this topic as someone who studied transactional analysis and working with teams and organizations. This topic of human interactions and relationship were always my big passion. And today's topic is so relatable, right? It happens to everyone. That's why it's so fantastic, because you can find yourself in a disagreement with a colleague at work over something you both feel strongly about, or with your partner, with a friend, and anywhere at work and also in your personal life, differing perspectives and approaches can cause tension, right? So this conflict that we're going to talk about today, while uncomfortable, it's an inevitable part of any relationship. But the good news is that learning to manage disputes well can lead to positive results, and also including improved relationships, opportunities to learn and grow, and higher job satisfaction overall. Teams that have good conflict resolution skills, I noticed that in my work, really tend to have better work outcomes, better results, and so on. And in general, if you think about it, when people respectfully engage in this open debate and let go of the need to win, they often generate new ideas and really produce breakthrough solutions. So today, we're going to talk about why are courageous conversation good for us, actually. Why is conflict good for us? And also, why is it difficult for us at the same time? Then we're going to have we're going to talk about what to do before the conversation. So we are going to talk about how to prepare for the dialogue with confidence. Then how to talk through a disagreement, what to do during the conversation, and in the end, how to achieve this win-win agreement, because that is our main goal when we are entering courageous conversation. And in the end, as Saba mentioned, I will be here to have a discussion with all of you and answer some of your questions. So without further ado, let's dive deep into this topic. So on the screen, you can see one quote that says, "For good ideas and true innovation, you need human interaction, conflict, argument, and debate." Now, I would love to hear your opinion. So do you agree with this statement? Please open your chat and write yes or no, and let me know what you think. Let's see. Yeah, good. Good, definitely. So well-managed conflict can really have positive outcomes and lead to innovation. Also, fighting against the popular opinions, if you think about it, even today in a democratic society, can really lead to breaking unanimous ideas that might be bad in the end. But unfortunately, the challenge is that many of us are unprepared to manage those disputes, right? And we may also be subject to misconceptions that prevent us from resolving disagreements productively. That's why it's very important for us to learn what to do in those situations. Good. Now, I would like to invite you to recall the last difficult conversation that you had, or perhaps that you're going to have. And really think about, feel this. So the difficult conversations start in the belly, right? So we feel anxious, we feel high stress in us, because we are afraid of what we feel and what others will feel as well. So I really invite you to think about this conversation. If you can, scan the QR code or join the link that Saba will post now in the chat. Join the Mentimeter, and let's really ask ourselves, what stands in the way? What am I aware of when I'm about to have this conversation? What is happening inside of me? Let's see. We already have some answers. So we have feeling that it's unpredictable. What else? Thinking about other people's feelings, yes, definitely pushes you from your comfort zone. What consequences? Yes, definitely. Uncertainty, not knowing where or how to start. That's very good. Yes. What happens in you? What stands in your way to have this? Hurting other people's feelings. Yes, may harm your relationships. Very good. We are going to talk about this. Excellent. Thank you all. Yeah, so as you can see here, there are a lot of things that are difficult about these courageous conversations, right? Even though rationally we know that no new ideas are happening if we don't challenge someone, but yet it is something that stands in our way. So today we will be talking really about this, right? So why are difficult conversations so difficult? So per book, Difficult Conversations, written by Douglas Stone, Bruce Patton, and Sheila Heen, and I encourage you to really take a look at the book. Each discussion has three sides. So the first side is the side of what happened. So it's the actual situation, right? In this perspective of what actually is happening of the situation, we have some feelings of blame, feelings of accusation. It is really a situation when every person thinks they are right and others are wrong. For example, let's think of an example of your personal life, right? Imagine your partner comes back from the supermarket without buying you your favorite snack. You immediately attack your partner for neglecting your needs and not paying attention to what you say, and your partner says they honestly forgot to buy the snack. However, you still interpret this as a disrespect and feeling unloved. You can even say, if you're a bit stressed that day, if it's not your day, you can even say, it was your fault that I was late for work because I had to stop and buy the snack on my way to work. You can even say, you never listened to me, right? So these are some of the sentences that are so familiar to us from our personal life. And this is when our emotions come in place. So feelings are the second part of discussion. They might go from disappointment, frustration, even anger, to feelings of sadness and being really hurt. And in the end, and this is something very interesting, identity. So this part of conversation revolves around our image about ourselves, right? Because we see ourselves as a nice person. So once we need to approach, for example, our neighbor to ask them to lower the music because we are trying to sleep, we're afraid we might come across as maybe combative person or somebody who is not that nice. So we have here the question of identity. And how might others see us if we start a courageous conversation? I saw in the Mentimeter, a couple of you mentioned this part. So what will other people think about me? Right? I don't know if you had this experience, but I had this experience when I was at the hairdresser and I didn't like the hairstyle at all. She asked me if I like it. I said, yeah, very nice. And then I just went home and started crying. So this is the moment when we don't want to destroy this image that we have about ourselves, because humans, we have a tendency to think in a very opposite thing. So we see the world as black and white, as good and bad, as nice and rude, and so on. So we are unable to really think of us that we are protecting ourselves in this case. And it's not that we are not a nice person if we stand our ground and fight for our boundaries, right? Good. So this question of identity, and when we are scared that we might break this identity that we have about ourselves, these moments can really cause avoidance of the problem. Now let's take a closer look of this potential avoidance. Now, there are a couple of images here on the slide that you can see. And if we think about it, every one of us growing up watched and observed how to respond to conflict, right? So we learned what happens when we speak up, what happens if we don't speak up. And we watched other people, how they deal with disagreement, when they feel angry, when they feel guilty, etc. And in psychotherapy, in transactional analysis, we call this a little professor, right? It is our inner child who was writing down lessons and notes while we were growing up, observing how other people behave and how other people react on our certain behaviors. So we were just taking notes. And now that we are a grown up, we are using those notes and they are highly impacting our behavior. Also, if you take a look around yourself, if you observe people you were growing up with, you will see how much your conflict style is so similar to theirs, because you learned behaviors by observing them, right? So why are we talking about this now? Because knowing how you naturally respond to conflict can really help you be better prepared when facing a difficult interaction. It can also help you listen better to people, behave better in a conflict. We will talk a bit later about that. But when dealing with disagreements, people really tend to be either conflict avoiders or conflict seekers. So we can see that here on the slide, we can see that there are actually just only 3 dances when we are in a conflict, right? There is a flee, flee, fight, fight, and flee, fight, right? So it's just happening in those three directions. So number 1, fight or flee, right? So let's take an example. Imagine I want to talk to you about a problem. And you say, not now. I would chase you around the house. I would knock on your door until you come out and you talk to me. Does this work? No. Because the more I run after you, the more you need your space and distance, and you're closing the door. And I'm going to make you even more of a withdrawer. And what would actually help in this situation, if I would come to you, if I would say, I want to talk to you about this, and you say, not now. And I would say, okay, you have a legitimate right to say, I can't have this discussion right now. Fair enough. But then you need to be the one to re-engage. So you don't put me in the position of the one waiting, because if we had your way, we wouldn't ever talk. So I'm getting more and more desperate if you ignore me. It's a normal reaction, right? And the mismanagement of conflict can really cause reinforcement of each of the participants, which is actually the opposite of what we want. So I encourage you, once you get into a conflict, if you're into a courageous conversation, either at work or in personal life, be aware of how you behave. Because listening and coming to effective conversation is what you want in the first place, right? And that will not happen if both parties push their own style. So be patient and ask the other person to share their opinion. Now, second one, fighter. So I do not recommend these 2 interactions at all, because it can escalate very fast. And these are the people who, per Esther Perel, do kitchen sinking. So what is a kitchen sinking? Kitchen sinking is, in 20 seconds, you bring up all the dirty dishes in one sink, and everything you ever done to me when we actually started fighting about, I don't know, you not putting dirty socks in the laundry, right? So they escalate very quickly. And if one person says, okay, I understand, but what about the time you blah, 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 right? Because they are not done. They are never done. They could go on and on and on. So it becomes explosive very fast. And we have one person attacking, we have another person defending by counterattacking, right? And it can go on and on. And in the end, if you think about it, you can't wash the dishes if you have all the dishes in the sink piled up at the same time, right? So pick one dish, pick one challenge, and just start with that. Don't pile up the dishes, because you're just destroying the relationship like that. You're not going to resolve anything. And then the third one, avoider. So in this situation, flee, right? Let's imagine our example with socks. So imagine you put your socks on the floor for 15th time, right? Even if we talked about it. But this time I don't say anything. And you wait. And I don't say anything. I'm cold. I'm waiting to see if you're going to say something. But you're also waiting to see if I'm actually going to say something. And then I don't talk to you for 3 days, maybe. And we distance ourselves. Days go by. One of us can crack a joke or ask for lunch, right? And we may think, okay, everything's just got smooth. We're back to normal. But the problem is not resolved. Instead, say, can we talk about this now? So you put an effort to resolve it instead of leaving it to get cold and distant. And eventually you just grow apart and actually you never talked about the problem. So again, watch yourself how you behave when the conflict starts. Underlying conflicts are really hidden agendas. So it's never about the socks. It's never about the snack from the supermarket, right? It's always about something else. So usually the topics that are underneath, something that is really hurting us, but we mask it with a simple, superficial, everyday examples, is whose priorities matter the most, who has the power, who is more important than me. Then the second, closeness and connection. Who has my back? Can I rely on you? So from a simple, stupid mistake of forgetting to buy you a snack, you might think, this person, I can't trust this person. This person doesn't listen to me. This person doesn't listen to my needs. I'm never valued, right? And the third one, respect and recognition. Do you value me? If you know that I don't like socks on the floor, why you keep doing it over and over, right? So it is really the question, am I valued and am I being seen in this relationship? If you look at your fights and don't take them literally, but really take a look at what is underneath, and also ask yourself, what was it that it was a trigger for me in this situation? Why did I explode over dirty dishes? What was it that was really bothering me? So now if we take a look at the other side, so we had this about when to engage into a fight, when the relationship is really important for us, when it's worth it to resolve it. But now there's also an established framework that I want to share with you that was done by Thomas Kliman. Maybe some of you saw this already. So this framework for handling conflict looks at conflict situations through two lenses. So we have issue and we have relationship, right? So it really depends what is more important for us in which situation, right? So let's imagine when both the issue and relationship are unimportant, right? So here we have low issue and low relationship. There we have avoidance. And avoidance is a perfect legitimate strategy in this moment. So why would we spend time engaging when we don't value the outcome or we don't desire to build a relationship? It's a stranger. I don't care about this person, right? So there is another way of saying, don't sweat the small stuff. And while I don't believe, and it's all small stuff, I think there's a lot of potential conflict situation that we can just safely ignore, really. Just like choose your battles. Imagine someone tells you off on the street or comments on your hairstyle or trolls you on the internet. You will probably just ignore them. You don't know the person, you don't care. So that's okay. Avoidance should happen in this moment. But when the issue is not very important for us personally, but we realize it is important to the other person, we can willingly give in, right? So we have the strategic accommodation. So we have a high relationship and low importance of the issue. I don't care that much, but I see that you care, right? So this accommodation is different from the avoidance because it still requires us to engage. When we avoid, we don't engage at all. But when we accommodate, we kind of let the other person know that we are letting go for their sake, right? We should accommodate when this is useful in building or improving our relationship with the other person. In other words, they kind of owe us because we are accommodating their needs, doing them a favor, right? And then we have when the issue is very important and the relationship is less so, the recommended strategy is competition. So fight for the outcomes you desire and defend your position on the issue. This can also be categorized as a win-lose situation, because in this competition, there can only be one winner, right? And while some people use this approach all the time, it's not recommended. This is really best practice only in moderation when the issue is really of a critical importance, when you need to make a quick decision, when there's a lack of time, and when taking others along is extremely difficult. So you don't have time to take everybody's opinion and to agree with everyone. So you just have to make a decision to go on your own. If this is done correctly, this is the equivalent of fighting for the greater good, right? When it's a crisis situation, let's say. And then we also have when the issue is important, but you also value the relationship highly, the appropriate conflict handling style would be collaboration, right? While it is difficult to argue against the desirability of collaboration, it would not be wise to make this your go-to strategy for all situations. Now we saw that based on the situation, you should choose and choose your battles, really choose how you will react. But adopting a collaborative approach to every potential conflict situation will require you to invest significantly more time, more effort, more attention, because it's really caring about the relationships as well, right? And the creator of this framework decided to throw on an extra bonus for when you can't quite figure it out what you value more, or more realistically, when the other strategies cannot be applied, right? So this is the strategy of compromise. The compromise is often described as a lose-lose, actually, because unlike the other strategies, neither of the parties to the conflict get quite what they want in a compromise. However, this might be a useful temporary strategy while you create the space and circumstances for more permanent resolution. I would suggest in this case, you should be careful if you compromise, because in the end, it can be a Solomon's choice. So just be careful and think about what would be the best in a situation. So as we mentioned, is it really worth it, right? So let's give it a try in a real life scenario. So let's imagine a situation. We have Anne and Tom as colleagues. Imagine that Tom had to deliver some report, and Anne is really frustrated that Tom delivered data containing several errors for a customer billing audit. They're working together, right? They had to make a deadline, and report has errors. So in order to make their deadline, she made the decision that she had to work after hours correcting all his mistakes and then submit the report by herself. She knows that she will need to work with him on future projects, including a presentation she's delivering to the leadership committee next month, and so on and so forth. However, she's still hesitant to address the issue. She's not sure how to approach him, and just overall worried the conversation might get awkward and tense, right? From all those reasons that we saw at the beginning. Now, I'm asking you, would you address this issue with him if you were Anne? Yes or no? Write me in the chat. What would you do? Yes, I see some yes. Yes. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Okay. Everyone says yes. Fabulous. Okay. So, if you are still deciding, for some of you who are still deciding whether to take, to directly address this conflict, I suggest you to consider these factors. So Question number one, you can ask yourself, how much do I need to interact with this person to do my job? So if you're having difficulties with a coworker who you collaborate with regularly on important projects, like for example, Anne is doing with Tom, do not let conflict prevent you from being able to work together in the future. So in this case, yes, you were right. Addressing it directly can help improve your communication with this person. Now, question number two, will you be working together for a brief time or an extended period? For short-term interactions, you may decide it's not worth it, right? However, for long-term working relationship, you will want to find positive ways to address the disagreement. So yes, in this case, it's worth it. And the third one, what's the impact if we don't address the conflict, right? When a conflict involves a relationship that could carry a great deal of risk for your organization, for your projects, for your KPIs, results, etc., it's very important to address it directly. Good, awesome. Now that we decided to address this, let's see how can we prepare Anne for this conversation. So there are some of the things that you need to take into your consideration. So one is identify the type of conflict. So is the disagreement a clash of personalities or a conflict over a process or a task? What is it about, right? Are you and the other person in a struggle over status, maybe? Somebody's not respecting you and so on. So conflict rarely falls into just one category. So I suggest you to consider that more than one issue may be occurring. So just think about what is the type of conflict, what is really happening. Second one, and very important, organize your thoughts, right? So we saw at the beginning when we are entering difficult conversation, it's very emotional. We feel it in our gut. So take a breath, acknowledge, then set aside any emotional response you're feeling and think about what's really happening. So think about the situation, think about facts, think about the situation objectively and gather all the relevant and realistic details, all the objective details that really happened. We will see afterwards how, in a real example, how can we use those facts. Now, the third one, look for common ground and have a clear desired outcome from the conversation. Even though we think that we cannot find a common ground with the person, I bet everyone has a common ground, right? So knowing what you and your counterpart agree on before you have a conversation can really help you frame the conversation and find a shared goal as a foundation for resolving this issue. It's crucial to have in mind. It's really unrealistic to set the goal of changing the other person. We cannot and we should not change anyone. We cannot and we should not change anybody's opinion, anybody's mind, etc. Instead, focus on the outcome of the situation, not the person. Have on your mind that we are talking about the situation, we are talking about the behavior and not the person. We will see afterwards in the example, how can we use this in the language so that we don't attack the person, but we really have on our mind what happened. And then the last one, list all the specific issues you disagree on to help you guide the conversation. So just be aware of all the aspects, all the perspectives to prepare yourself, right? Don't think that conflict is bad, because it's not. I promise you, it's not as bad as you think. But also try to prepare for using specific language that just you can be more receptive and you can really handle your emotions. Preparation is really key in these work that you have preparing yourself for a courageous conversation. And it's not easy, right? It's not easy to be receptive, especially when we feel very strongly about our beliefs or about our opinions. But preparing once we enter that conflict or disagreement is going to be extremely helpful, I promise you. Now, let's see. How can we really reframe what happened dialogue, if you remember from the previous slide, into a learning conversation? So not to be obsessed of who did what, to blame other people, to accuse other people, but really to shift it into, let me learn about it. I want to be curious. Why did you do what you did? So conflicts are not going to resolve on their own, right? In most cases, they need to be actively addressed. And that means working with your counterpart to understand the causes and come up with a solution together. So as mentioned, the key to productive discussion is to begin the conversation collaboratively, not combatively, right? So the focus should be on a collaborative solving the problem, without accusation, without blame. So I suggest you really replace thoughts like, how can this person be so unreasonable, into, it's fascinating how we view the same situation differently. I'm curious about their perspective. I want to know more. What is it that they know that maybe I don't know? So they have this opinion, right? So this approach will shift your emotions from attack to curiosity and really allow you to frame the conversations towards a successful resolution. So avoid jumping into conclusions and really focus on the actions and impact. Don't assign any blame, but engage into conversation to jointly navigate the situation. What can we both do to move forward, right? That is our goal. Now, there are different mindsets when we enter the conflict. I put here as a title, why is it easier to fight than to listen? One of the mindset is, when we enter the conflict or a courageous conversation, one of the things that we might be thinking, I'm going to convince you. I'm right and you're wrong. But the more you're trying to change their mind, the more you're contributing to reinforcing their position that you're actually trying to undo in the first place. And that is the biggest paradox of this, right? You want to invite a conversation that is more empathic. What would happen if you actually listen and if you actually try to understand the other person's position, right? Listening well and responding thoughtfully to your counterpart improves mutual understanding. Many times we might think a person is saying something because they want to say it, but no, it's highly impacted by other persons listening, actually. So what I'm saying to you is influenced by how you, by how I experience your listening. And your listening is shaping what I will say next. Because if you are not listening to me, I may start being very aggressive, and I might even say, you're not even listening to me. You don't understand me, right? You can see how listening is not passive. It's very active and very powerful. So we are not only using active listening in coaching practice or at work, we should be using active listening all the time, especially in courageous conversations. So in dialogue, there is no winner. It's inviting listening, curiosity, and we're really looking into new options together. So it's not like I'm right, you're wrong, but let's find a third option that might be even better, right? So now how can we use our self-awareness that we mentioned at the beginning of this webinar in order to have better listening? What do you think? So let's imagine a situation. You had a very strict mother that was always right and always knew better. Oh, I know better. You will see when you grow up, and so on. Now, every time, now that you're an adult, every time someone talks to you from the tone and position that they know better, something is triggered in you. And you are entering into debate immediately without even being able to listen, because you're triggered, because you see your mother in those people, right? Now, because you know that about yourself, it helps you either tell the person directly, hey, it will be difficult for me to listen to you, if you're presenting yourself from all-knowing from the start, or you can just say to yourself, okay, you're going to have a chill pill now because it may sound the same, but this person is not coming from the same place as you're used to it, or from the same intensity you're used to it when you were a child, and that is triggering you. So take a deep breath and ask yourself, what is it in me that I can't listen to this person? And maybe even ask yourself, can I do something about it? And invite the other person, say, can you say this again, please? And this very powerful practice, when you ask another person to repeat it, what happens is that it's forcing you to be more open to listen and not receive it and as an attack. And it really helps you calm the nerves from initial reaction. Because the first time a person says something, you're triggered. But then when you invite the person to say it again, you have time to really calm down your triggers, calm down from the initial reaction, and be more open to listen more actively. Now, to show your interest in their perspective, let them talk, right? So hear them out, invite for feedback. Pay attention to what they're saying, not what you will say next. That's very important, because a lot of people, when they're communicating with someone, when they're having a conversation, they're not listening. They're just thinking, what's their next sentence, right? So it's very important to pay attention to what the person is saying. Now, the second one, if you feel comfortable doing so, show your listening through eye contact. Look people in the eyes, an occasional nod, an attentive posture. Stay calm, stay open, pay attention to the tone. Do not be sarcastic. Do not be ironic. Sarcasm is not leading you anywhere. Do not make another person feel that you're not validating their words, right? That's very important. And then the next one, acknowledge their position. So this doesn't mean that you're agreeing with it, but saying, I see your point, shows that you respect them and you value their opinion, that you see them, you acknowledge and validate their opinion and their existence. And then the last one, be curious. So to show that you're not only listening, but also that you want to better understand what they're saying, ask thoughtful questions to clarify the other person's perspective. Say, what am I hearing you say is, or say something like, is this right? Am I hearing you right? Right? When you say, what am I hearing you say is, against, you said this, it's different, right? Can you notice the difference? Because when we say, what I'm hearing you say is, it is, I'm telling you now my perception of your words. But if we say, you said this, a person might say, oh, don't put words in my mouth, right? They might find it as an attack. So really try not to say, you said this, but try saying, what I heard you say is, am I understanding you correctly, and so on. You can also ask, is there more? So you said this, this, and that. Is there more? So invite them for more elaboration, more feedback, more sharing of opinion. It can be very powerful. Now, the SBII model for feedback. So this is the model that I really wanted to share with you because it's an easy model and it can really help you address the situation or provide a constructive feedback, right? At work, in your personal life, etc. And it can really help you create and prepare for the conversation. So create your speech through this model. So remember our girl Anne from the beginning of the webinar and her conflict with Tom, right? So we decided that Anne is going to talk to Tom about this issue, right? So now let's help her lead the conversation by using this module. So we have SBII, meaning we start with the situation, we go to behavior, we talk about impact, and we ask for inquiry, right? So in this our situation, we can say, Anne can say to Tom, hi, Tom, I would like to talk to you. So last week, we agreed that you will send me the data report for a customer billing audit. Yesterday, I noticed you sent me data containing several errors and show exact examples. It is very important to deliver the correct data as this can have direct impact on the audit outcome. Do you need any additional help to make sure you deliver correct data in the future? So what are you noticing this? What are you noticing in this module? What are you noticing in these examples? So I highlighted here, so we have last week, send me the data report, right? Yesterday, examples. So as you can see here, and stick to the facts. She wasn't emotional. She was not coming from blame and accusations. She never said, why did you do this? How could you be so stupid to do something like that, etc. She's not accusing the person. She's talking about the behavior, the situation that exactly happened, right? So she rationally and objectively described the situation and impact and asked for feedback in the end, what can be done better in the future so we don't have these mistakes again, right? So she was curious, and that is the main point here. So do not attack people, be curious to understand where they're coming from. Good. So now, I'm cautious about the time, so I would just like to conclude this saying all conflicts are different, right? But one thing is really certain: to resolve a disagreement in a way that satisfies you and your counterpart, you'll need to work together, right? A good resolution requires clear communication and some give and take from each party. And no matter what kind of conflict you're trying to address, seek a resolution that will satisfy as many interests as possible, be fair, and maintain the relationship. Because a successful agreement keeps your business relationship really intact and allows you to manage future disagreements more smoothly if you repaired this relationship with the person. Now, to conclude, we have here 4 things that I would like to emphasize in coming to a win-win situation or a win-win agreement that we are striving for when we care about the relationship, right? So the first thing is focus on the agreement. So when you approach the conflict as a challenge that you and your counterpart can work together to overcome, you often diffuse attention, right? So really focus on what is a common ground, what is the agreement. A good next step is to find those areas where you agree. So for example, Tom and Anne, they both agree that they need to send out the report with correct data to the customer, to the client, until required deadline, right? So that is their goal. They both agree on that. They both want that. Now, acknowledge your counterpart's point of view by saying something like, that's a valid point, or I see what you mean, right? Because it demonstrates that you're listening and willing to collaborate. Now, the second one, explore options together. People sometimes in the conflict think they are the only ones with the brain. But when we are exploring options together, I promise you the magic happens, right? So reaching a resolution requires you and the other person to thoughtfully consider other options that are acceptable for you both, right? So remain flexible, remain open to some new ideas, something that you haven't thought about, new perspectives. The third one, very important one, map out a solution. So write down the solutions. Once you and your counterpart have come up with some possible ways to resolve the conflict, you'll need to evaluate them and make a decision together. So once you agree on the path forward, I suggest you put it in writing. So in the future, if something happens, hey, you can refer it. You can say, we wrote it down. This is what we agreed on. Okay, if it's not valid anymore, we can go and update it. But it's important that we have it in written, that both parties agreed on this. Then repair the relationship. In most cases, you still need to work with the other person after a conflict is over, right? Even if there is some loss of trust between you, it's possible to put the conflict behind you and just move on by taking steps to rebuild your working relationship. And in the end, don't forget, a successful resolution addresses the source of the conflict. So remember the hidden agendas, and provides a way to move beyond the disputes. It prevents really the future problems that can arise if one party feels ignored, wrong, disrespected, not valued. That would be all from my side. So thank you all very much. We are on time for questions or insights or anything that might come to your mind? What is the one thing that you're going to take away for your next courageous conversation? The SBI module. Perfect. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Grace. Yes, I would love to hear more about the feedback after using the SBI module, if you found it useful. Goal is to solve problem, not to win a fight. Yes, exactly. I took note of feedback. Forward module, great. It's a very useful way to structure your conversation. Yes, yes, it is, Grace, indeed. It's very useful. And it helps you really, if you get prepared, if you construct conversation in your head up front, it really helps you calm down the tension and be focused on the solution.
There's a question in the questions, Nevena, and it's how to recover a relationship that is broken, but you need to keep working with this person.
That's a very good point. It takes time, of course, and it takes an effort. So I would advise it depends of a situation and it depends of a person. Sometimes you just need to take a break, right? Sometimes you just need to wait a little bit for the passion and emotions to calm down. But another thing is, of course, open communication, finding a common ground, talk about it, just communicate. But from the perspective from how can we repair this? So be honest, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. So tell openly to the person, I would love to work together as we used to do. I would love to repair this relationship. What do you suggest? So sometimes we don't know how another person feels and what is it that we can do. So it really depends of a person. Apologize sometimes, right, as well, if we are having, if we did really something wrong and we feel sorry about it, don't be shy to apologize. Invite another person for further communication. Do we have more questions, Saba?
No, that's the only, oh, there's another one. Suggest, I don't know if this is literal or metaphoric, but there's suggest how to resolve a conflict around the socks. The example you gave at the beginning.
Yes, that's a very good point. Well, again, communicate, but first of all, go from your own self-awareness. Think about, why is this triggering me? Why are socks so important for me? Why is it that this bothers me so much? And think about whether I have a feeling that my partner or my roommate does not respect when I tell him or her something, right? They don't listen to me. So communicate, say, hey, in this situation, I feel this and that. Can we please communicate about it? Maybe they are not aware that, you care so much and that you feel in a certain way. It happened to me so many times with my partner. Sometimes I do something and he's very hurt. And then I go like, oh, come on, please. It's not a big deal. But for him, it is, because it is something underneath that we need to communicate. And then what I do in those cases, I come to him and I ask, what is really bothering you? Like, okay, maybe this is not the real problem, but let's talk about what is really bothering you. What is underneath that bothers you so much that I did this? So just open communication.
Another question. Sometimes we need constructive feedback to improve our roles, but what is the process with the leader who struggles with constructive feedback and only likes to give positive feedback?
Yes. I've been working with leaders for so many years, and this is something that I noticed that it happens a lot. So this goes to this avoidance, right? When we saw on the first slide, when we talked about identity. So why do you think people will think that you are not nice if you give constructive feedback? Try shifting this into perspective. My constructive feedback is helping them become better, right? So I am being nice by providing a constructive feedback. Also, very important thing, constructive feedback, it's not a negative feedback. That's why it's called constructive, because it helps people become better. And I encourage you to use SBII module because it helps you stay constructive, not go into the negative, because stating facts and stating what really went wrong and giving examples and also being timely. So do not bring something up that happened 6 months ago. So try to always be timely. So when something happens, give feedback immediately and stick to the facts and invite person to give you their own opinion. Maybe something is happening in their life and you as a leader, you don't know. Many times people are not performing well, not because they're lazy or because they're stupid, but something is wrong inside of them. There might be lack of engagement. There might be lack of clarity. There might be some personal issues. So I invite really, that's why it's so crucial for leaders to talk to people and to address those challenges on time, because if you do it on time, you can really help the person.
Right. I don't see any more questions, but we do still have a few minutes for more. I think Nevena is providing very clear explanations with examples, and I really love your presentation, Nevena. It's full of wisdom and full of practical tools that we can adopt. So we still have a few minutes if you want to ask questions or make comments, of course. Okay. There's a question. There's a thanks, and then there's your suggestion, please. Right. I don't see any more questions, but we do still have a few minutes for more. I think Nevena is providing very clear explanations with examples, and I really love your presentation, Nevena. It's full of wisdom and full of practical tools that we can adopt. So we still have a few minutes if you want to ask questions or make comments, of course. There's a thanks, and then there's your suggestion, please. In resolving a conflict with your boss, who tends to take a position, do not argue, just implement? You know, if you have a boss who tends to take a position, do not argue, just implement.
That is a tricky one. So it really, really depends. At the end of the day, you know, I was also having some presentations about assertive communication a few months ago in one company. And I got the question, what should be done if we don't feel valued or respected, right? If there is a heat in the air. At the end of the day, we need to protect ourselves, right? So if something is not working, if somebody is not being open or respectful, it's time to say, okay, I do not feel this is really bothering me, it's stressing me out. This is how I feel in this situation. And, you know, sometimes we just need to communicate how we feel. If we have a boss who is really leading by authority, I would also invite this person for a conversation. Is there a trust issue? Why don't you trust me? Maybe pitch some idea and maybe try, you know, let's take a look at from the different perspective and really talk about what is it that makes your boss feel that you are not able to make decisions or that you're not able to give your own opinion or perspective, right? Investigate a little bit more, research a little bit more. This sentence is definitely not something that is welcome in any organization. However, we saw that in some very time-critical moments, somebody needs to make a decision. So maybe that's the case. Maybe your manager had to make fast decision without being able to collect the data and other people's opinion. So maybe that was the situation when he just had to make a quick decision without really including other people. Or if it's repetitive, I would really sit down and talk to this person and ask, why don't you trust me? what's happening. Invite for collaboration, invite for communication, and always be curious. So be curious about their perspective, be curious about their behavior.
Thank you, Nevena, and I think you've already also during your presentation, you've given us tips on how to build up the courage to do so, because it's not always easy. So remember to refer back to what she said about building up that courage and resilience to step up and have any difficult conversation that you need to have in life. I also really like, Nevena, you're very realistic in your presentation. You don't, just throw easy solutions and here you go. There are times, for example, when you said you might evaluate that it's not worth even tackling the conflict because you're only staying there for a few more months. You're not staying in that job. So there are a lot of nuggets where you are really being very realistic and helping people realize that they have to take precautions and use their good judgment to address a difficult conversation or not. So that's very helpful, and I think it builds the trust of our audience in what you're saying, that what you're saying is realistic, useful, and also, I must say, research-based. Nevena always uses research and doesn't go into easy solutions. So thank you very much for that. You're getting tons of claps, and everybody's agreeing with me that you gave an excellent presentation. So I want to thank you for that. I'm going to give a couple of informations, Nevena, if I may, practical stuff for our audience, and then I'll give you the last word because you're a very wise person, and I'm sure you'll have a nice last word to share. So for the audience, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed. I'm confident that you enjoyed this presentation and that you make good use of it. We have nice appreciations here. Dear Nevena and Saba, thanks a lot. Great insights. Thanks for the great session, and we'll take pleasure in reading them afterwards. That I want you to know that this is the last webinar of a series of 12. So we had 3 days intensive webinars of all sorts, focused on individual strengthening, like Nevena has told us about. We've had people talk about how they develop the coaching culture in their organization. So really of interest to managers and HR professionals. We've had a great variety. It's not only the webinars, but there are also several interviews. One with Nevena also. She has a wonderful interview. I can't wait to share that so you can watch it. And
Yeah.
I leave the last word to Nevena, and I say goodbye to you.
Thank you so much, Saba, for inviting me, for giving me this honor to participate in the International Coaching Week. And thank you all of you who joined this session, who shared your examples, your very valuable questions. And if there are any questions that might come to your mind or you didn't have a chance to answer, please connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message, and we can just grab a coffee chat and talk about this. This topic is really, we can talk about it in days. So please feel free to message me anytime. Thank you all.
Thank you.